Hello, it is once more Marika from the future with a couple content warnings before we get into the episode. First off, we do talk about time skip spoilers for Haikyuu sometimes, nothing specific, but we do reference people's professions and where they end up, so if you're staying spoiler free for that, this one might be a skip. Secondly, we do reference sex, not in extremely explicit detail, but with some specificity still. And lastly, when we talk about our histories in fandom, we reference Harry Potter a decent amount just because it was such a formidable part of our early fandom experiences. But I want to take this moment to unequivocally state that we do not share or support J.K. Rowling's opinions and statements on trans rights or lack thereof. Although we don't bring that up at all in the context of the podcast, I thought it was an important thing to note at the beginning. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I'll let us get into the podcast now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Acid Wash Anime Podcast. I'm your host, Marika, and this is my lovely co-host, Sydney.
Hello.
Together, we make up the bisexual supporting cast, and today we are talking about a topic that is very near and dear to our hearts. That is Haikyuu Rarepairs. But first, we're going to take an episode and explore our history with getting into fandom, multi-shipping, and rare pair shipping in general, and kind of have some more basic discussions about the general shipping community in relation to Haikyuu, but also in relation to some other fandoms before we really dive into our opinions on specific rare pairs. So I think, unless you have anything to insert at the very beginning here, we're just going to jump right into the topic. Let's just start off with, what do you define as like a rare pair? And what do I define as a rare pair? Because I feel like people might think of what a rare pair is differently.
Cool. I wanted this to be one of the things we talked about first, because on Twitter, like a month ago or so, someone that I follow asked that same question. They were like, what do you consider a rare pair? And they posed it in terms of the amount of fix. Mm-hmm. Like, is it less than 500? Is it less than 1,000? Is it less than 50? Because another person I followed one time asked, like, give me some, like, Haikyuu rare pairs that you love. Has to be under 50 fix on AO3, which to me is, like, that's, like, an ultra rare pair. If it's less than 50, like, like, wow. Like, we're digging in the dirt for these pairings.
Well, and also, I also always wonder whether, is that just you go to the ship name and then that is the only filter and you're looking, or do you have a language filter on that? Do you have a content level filter on that, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, because are you only searching complete? Are you only searching, like, no archive warnings apply? Like, anything like that. To me, if you're going by fic, I think it's just the relationship tag, because I think that's the fairest way to just look at the sheer amount. And there is a skew with, like, those Drabble collection ones that tag every mother-loving ship that they can possibly think of and are like, send me requests.
That people wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because not only does it just clog up the filters when you're trying to search for things, but I feel like it's not an effective way to get eyes on your pieces.
Absolutely.
Because I'm, for the most part, not going into those and trying to find the one Drabble or the one shot that pertains to what I'm looking at. And additionally, I feel like a lot of times those show up when you're searching, for me at least, it's less when I'm searching for specific pairings and more when I'm searching for specific tags. And you'll get a lot of people doing like the Kinktober one-shot Drabbles as all like one fic. And it's like, I'm not gonna like try to look through and see if it's the pairing that I want with, or a pairing that I'm interested with the tag that I want, or like what if like one of the tags that I don't really care about is in the same fic as the tag that, it's just so ambiguous. I wish that people would just split them up. I know it maybe adds a lot of like clutter to your author page somehow, or I don't know.
Yeah, but then I feel like it looks cooler. Like, you have like a shit ton of works, and like, they might, like, a lot of them might be small or something, but at least they are individual, their own work, and it's not. And like, you can still collect them with like a series. Or like, if you don't want to put them in a series, you can do your own like bookmarked collection of your own fics.
I wish that maybe Archive would have an option that you could put that under and be like, I know they have collections, but I wish you could mark, maybe there needs to be a different terminology so it doesn't get confusing with their collections, but essentially mark a fic as a collection so that you could filter that out. Because sometimes people will say, oh, we'll filter OTP true, but that also filters out. So for those of you who don't know, if you're on Archive of Our Own and you filter like a ship with OTP true, it will show you fics that only have that ship tagged. Yeah. But then that also excludes ships or fics with that ship, but one secondary ship.
Yeah. And like not just like secondary ships that are like actually like relevant to the plot.
Yeah,
or something.
Exactly.
Not just like, oh, they have like, they appear 2 seconds, established relationship in the background.
Right.
Which that can be taken care of in like the author's note at the beginning.
Right.
Whatever.
So I don't like using that filter. So that it's, I just wish there was a way to get those giant blocks of collections out. And I heard that there's a way, and I haven't really looked into it because I haven't cared that much too, but I heard there's a way to put a limit on the amount of tags you're searching for. So you can say like no fics over like 15 tags. Again, that's just details that I don't really care to figure out. If it's not in the options for me to like check
in
or
click, the automatic filters,
right?
There.
I'm like, this is too much.
Yeah,
but I did hear that was an option, but
yeah. And so with that person who was asking about fics, they were asking about Haikyuu specifically, but then it got me thinking, like, if you base Rarepairs solely off of fic number, then that has to ratio to the size of like the fandom, because like My Hero, there's like what, twice as many fics as like total as there are for Haikyuu or something.
I don't know, but knowing that My Hero has consistently been the most written for fandom this year until just recently.
Yeah.
Minecraft YouTubers
taking over. I don't get it, man, but whatever. But
yeah, because that kind of gets into like a real person shipping a little bit, and that's a whole different topic.
Another ball game.
Well, kind of. It is interesting, and again, I don't really want to get into RPF here, but it is interesting because from what I can tell, and I'm not in the Dream SMP fandom at all, I don't know anything about their content, but they have almost characters that like the YouTubers themselves are faceless, or at least some of them are, and so it is an interesting quote unquote RPF case where it is, because these are real people, but they're also more characterized, if that makes sense,
like
than
like caricatures of themselves, kind of.
Yeah, because you don't have like a face, you don't have a real face, you only have this like Minecraft thing, whereas you know when you're talking about actors or singers or whatever, you have that real tangible person, whereas here you have the person through the filter of a video game. So it adds an interesting point to, or an interesting aspect of this quote unquote real person fiction that I think is just interesting as an observation.
Yeah, fun to ponder about.
Yeah, fun to be like, look at this and think about this and
look at the nuance.
Yeah, it's more than just real people fic. But anyway, like I said, I don't really want to get into that right now, especially because neither of us are really into RPF at all, so we're probably not the best experts to be talking about.
No, absolutely not. It's not anything I've ever really touched. But yeah, so fic number, I feel like, can be a guide, especially for like events, if you're like trying to like make sure that what people are writing for is actually like what like whatever moderator considers to be rare pair. Like going off of that is like, I feel like a fair thing. But like Rarepairs themselves, so someone responded to that tweet that I saw that was asking, what do you consider a Rarepair? And someone said lack of fandom content is a Rarepair, lack of canon content is a crack pair. And I kind of vibe with that. It's obviously way too broad.
Where does Sakuatsu fall in that?
Exactly. I was thinking about that. I was like, that makes Sakuatsu a crack pair, but it is by far not a rare pair.
It's interesting because I was just taking a look today, actually, at the top ships for Haikyuu. And the 10th most popular ship in Haikyuu is Hanamaki and Matsukawa, which I don't know this for sure, but it's my assumption that they're that high because they're a frequent secondary pairing in Iwa-oi fics, which are very popular. It's the most popular
the most
ship.
popular ship.
So they are technically in the most popular pairings, but if you're looking for fics that are just them, it might be more difficult to find than just straight up looking at that list. You might intuit.
That, I kind of feel the same with Daisuga, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Daisuga is very, very common to be a secondary pairing in, like, any of the Cross Snow ships tags. And so they're really high up, and they are a popular pairing. They're like one of the big ones, you know, like,
right? The classic ones,
the classic ships.
Everyone is paired off in the show type shit.
Yeah, exactly. I had a really hard time going through the Daisuga tag because just trying to find something that was like focused, like Daisuga was the main ship in the thing, because it was almost always like background or like secondary, or it's the two of them and their established relationship and they're helping whatever other couple, usually Kagekina, like get together. I think there's something to lack of fandom content leaning itself towards rarepair. I kind of consider, for the most part, I kind of say anything that's not the main ship for whatever character is a rarepair. But then it kind of like, that's kind of like my general like first instinct definition for me. But then I think about ships like Bokuro or Kurotsuki, where like Kuroken, Bokawaka, Tsukiyama, those are like the main ships for those characters.
Right.
But Bokuro and Kurotsuki are also really popular. Like they're on the top 10.
I don't think Bokuro is.
Don't think Bokuro is? Okay, yeah. But they're up there too. They're not the ship, but they're also still very popular. So I would not consider those rare pairs.
Yeah. And additionally, I would say that Kindaichi and Kunimi are the main ship for those two characters, but there's not a lot of content for them just because they're not very popular characters.
And same with Kyohaba too.
Yeah. Although honestly, I was just like kind of looking at these numbers again, but Kyohaba has, if you just look at just them, no other filters, it's 1,200 fics.
That's decent.
Right.
I think that's around where like Kurodai is.
I have no clue, to be honest. But I was looking because Hanamaki Matsukawa are like 2,000 something.
Yeah, that's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
And then it's also like when you look at the, like, we say like, oh, top 10 ships or whatever, because like AO3 automatically shows that in the filters. But there's like a significant drop after like, I think it's Kagehina. I think Iwo and Kagehina are like, I think it might be high up there.
Hold on. 3. We can look this up really
We'll figure it out.
Do we go from bottom to top or top to bottom?
Bottom to top.
Okay. So number 10, we have Hanamaki and Matsukawa at 2,935 fics. Then we have Asahi and Noya at 4,176. So that's already a pretty significant jump.
That's like twice as many.
Right. Kuro and Tsukishima, 5,027. Atsumu and Sakuza, 5,548. Tsuki and Yamaguchi, 7,710. Kuro and Kenma, 8,118. Daichi and Suga, 8,631. Akashi Bokuto, 12,488. So that's another pretty big jump right there. Hinata and Kageyama, 14,760, and then Iwaizumi and Oikawa, 16,058.
Yeah, so
it's kind of crazy. Like the 10th most popular ship has just under 3,000, and the most popular has 16,000. I wonder if that's a pretty normal spread. It seems like a pretty big discrepancy, but I honestly have no clue.
Rare pairs, I don't know. I just feel like you can kind of feel it. Like it's kind of an instinct almost.
Yeah,
like, if
it's
you
like
don't,
pornography.
You
can't define it, but everybody knows when they see it.
I think like not being the main ship and having low amounts of like fandom content or community around it is what kind of how I suss out what is a rare pair.
Yeah, and how much hate do you get for it when you post about it?
Yeah, that's a big one. Oh my goodness, people get so pressed if it's not with who everybody ships the character with.
To be fair, I feel like that doesn't happen too often in the Haikyuu fandom.
I see it a lot on TikTok.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm being very broad in general, but I feel like has something to do with the large amount of young people on the app. And so I feel like when you're an adult, most of the time, if you see a character shipped with another character and you either don't like the ship or you don't expect to see that ship, you're like, what the heck is that? for the most part, I feel like adults are able to go, huh, and like scroll away.
Right.
Whereas teenagers and preteens, it's almost like a threat to their, like, the in-group feeling that they have with fandom.
Yeah, or their perception of the character and their maybe identity that's tied to the character.
Yeah, like I saw like an Oihina Brazil post something on TikTok, and it was just a joke about like Oikawa and Hinata hooking up in Brazil, which I love all of those jokes.
I love all of those
every
jokes too.
single
You
every
said
single
that
joke.
and I instantly just
started
smiling.
Yep.
I just like, it's so wonderful.
I like it. Yeah, I vibe it, and I absolutely would die for Kagehina, but I enjoy that like joke. I enjoy other ships. Anyway, this is not about how much of a multi-shipper I am, but
which we both are.
we both are. Yes, this is a very much a multi-ship, poly-ship, shipping positive environment here.
Anti.
Stop. Let's not get into that.
Well, actually, I was going to ask,
Yeah.
did you finish or did you take the linguistic fandom?
I finished it.
Okay, so there was this survey. I don't remember what university was doing it or what college was doing it, but I found out about it because one of the, what am I trying to say? Organization for Transformative Works, one of their, I think it was Fanlore, posted about it. And it was basically a survey about fandom linguistics with a focus on kind of the pro-shipping and anti-shipping rhetoric. And there was an optional part at the end where you looked at posts and they asked you questions about what your impression of the poster would be. And one of the questions, and for the most part, I didn't really feel comfortable answering a lot of that. And I went into more detail at the end. I was like, this is why I don't think you can interpret these things about this person just from this post. But one of the questions they asked were the age. And it was really interesting to kind of break down why I interpreted certain posts as being younger and why I interpret certain posts as being older. It was an interesting point to kind of examine how I view these parts of fandom. Yeah. But anyway, I digress. So
I
because it reminded me of that because you were mentioning younger people on TikTok, and I do think that's something that is totally applicable, because I feel like so often when you look at there's just like this weird kind of, there's a level of immaturity that is the person obviously not recognizing how other people interpret their comment, which I feel like is a young thing because you grow more aware of other people's experience outside of your own as you get older, because there would be comments that are borderline rude,
just downright
and
rude,
that you kind of call them out and you're like, why did you say this was mean? And they reply and they're like, oh, I didn't mean to be rude.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, like, this is so stupid. There's no way that you could interpret this comment as anything other than rude. But really what's probably happening is it's a 12-year-old and it's someone who doesn't have a fully developed mind yet because they're a child.
Yeah.
And so they really didn't realize that what they were doing or saying was rude.
Yeah, like the lack of like just general like social skills because they're a child, but also like a severe lack of internet social skills there, because like that is like, those are two different like skill sets, and like they kind of lend themselves to each other, but it is definitely two different skill sets there. But so back to where we branched off was I saw like an Oihina related TikTok, and it wasn't a shippy TikTok like thing. It was just like something about Oikawa like teaching Hinata how to like dance in Brazil or something, and like comments, there was a lot of comments about people being like, this is the only Oikawa Hinata headcanon I'll accept, like nothing else happened in Brazil, da da da. Like people were like being like very aggressive about being like Brazil hookup did not happen, this is what happened in Brazil, blah 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 blah. And it just like kind of makes me feel like why not? Like, if that's for you, fine, but like it's not like the only thing that could have happened in Brazil, you know? Like I feel like there's a sense of like community that comes with fandom that's really, it's a really cool part of fandom. And so in fandom, like we all like this thing and we're all in it together. And so it feels like you have like this huge connection with like all of these like thousands and thousands of other people, and if you like the main ships and other people like the main ships, then you're in the group, you're part of the crowd and stuff. And then when you see stuff that like threatens that, I feel like people who are younger tend to react really badly to that. It's like, you're not in the crowd, that's not the main thing, you're not in the group.
It's so weird because I just can't, it's so hard for me to put myself in that mindset, because You haven't watched this video yet, but there's, you know what? I'm gonna look her up right now because I want to like give credit to this video. There's a video on fandom purity culture.
Very hot topic right now.
Very hot topic right now. Okay, it's by Melina Pendulum. She's a YouTuber. The video is called Purity Culture and Fandom. It's a mess. I 100% recommend that everyone go and watch this video. I think it's so well done. And she both talks about kind of generic purity culture within fandom, and she talks about the perspective from being a Black woman. And I think it's a really well done video. I can't stress enough how much I think everyone should watch it. And I just found myself relating to her a couple times when she was talking about her specific fandom experiences as a younger person. We're also around the same age. So that probably helped. But she was talking about being in the Harry Potter fandom, and she said something that was like, I bicycled Hermione around, like, with the different pairings, kind of as like Hermione was almost like a self-insert, was the implication. And I like did the same thing. But sometimes it's so harder because like I really shipped Hermione with like either one of the twins, but also with literally everyone. Like I read so much Hermione literally anyone except for Harry and Ron. I don't know why, but those I was like not interested in that. Any of the other Weasleys, any of the other students, like I did that. And so I never had this innate feeling that was attached to like a pairing that I thought that I liked so much that other people like shipping something else would conflict with it, because I think I've just always been somewhat of a multi-shipper at heart.
That's interesting.
It's such a weird, I don't know. Like now being an older adult or whatever, an adult in their late 20s. But I can understand on like a conceptual level how, you know, younger people feel that way and stuff, but on a certain level I can't relate to that because that was just never my experience.
It was my experience. So I feel like there's two kind of points of view on shipping. There's like shipping because you want to see it become canon, you want it to be like legit, and then there's shipping simply because you enjoy the potential of those two characters.
I totally agree.
And so I feel like when you're younger, it's primarily because you actually want to see it become canon, or at least for me. That's how it was when I was younger.
It was so interesting because I never, and I'm trying to think of if it's still true today, but for the longest time, I would say this, that like I don't seek out fandom content for things that I wanted to see happen in canon. I never used fandom content as like a fix-it. I never read, and again, to take it back to Harry Potter, because that was the fandom that I was in for the longest time. I was diehard, like Hermione and Ron belong with each other. Like that is the direction that I wanted to the books to go. I was glad when they did go in that direction, but I never read that. Like absolutely not interested in seeing them as a main pairing outside of the canon, because it was, I don't fully know. I guess it was probably because, well, it's in canon, like why would I seek out a different source for it? And I used fandom almost to try to explore like the fantasy of what ifs instead of like fix-its. But I don't know if that's, I don't know what's normal or what's usual. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because I mean, we can only speak to our own experiences, right? I guess. But yeah, I feel like for the most part, when people start shipping, it's because they want to see it happen. And so, and that at least, again, that is at least where I started. And I remember when I was younger, I felt a lot of pride in my ships. Of course, we didn't have that language for it back then, but I had a lot of pride in them because I was always right. And so, like, it takes me back to, like, Teen Titans. Robin and Starfire absolutely would die for them. I was like that was one of the earliest, like, TV show or, like, media couples that I remember wanting to get together, or like Ash and Misty from Pokemon 2. Like those were very, very early OTPs for me. And so in Teen Titans, there's Raven, and there's also, how old were you when you were like just generally, was this like elementary school? Was this middle school?
It was definitely elementary school. I think it was around 7 years old to 10 years old for me, because I know I watched it when I lived in California, and I know I still watched it when I moved to Oregon, and so that's kind of my benchmark for age there. Yeah, and so like Robin also gets shipped with the two characters Raven and Tara, and like I remember seeing that and thinking to myself, like, you people are nuts, like it's obviously Starfire, you're wrong, I'm right. And then when it ended up like in the movie, Robin and Starfire get together, and I felt so vindicated. I was like, suck it, BB Ray shippers. Like, or no, not BB Ray. BB Ray was Beast Boy and Raven. No, Rob Ray. Suck it, Rob Ray shippers. I was like, get out of here. Rob Star for life. And so I felt like a lot of like vindication in that, and like righteousness, like I was right to believe in this from the beginning, and like all of these other people who ship the other things must be so embarrassed now. When it's like yeah, the people may have been disappointed, but also they can still enjoy their ship even if it isn't canon, and they can still explore the dynamics of those characters. And now, like being older, like I do see the potential in those characters. Like Robin and Raven had like a whole like several episode arc where like he was inside her mind, like helping her like get through like trauma and stuff, and like Tara and Robin had like a whole bonding moment over being like slaves to Slade for a while and stuff like that. And so I'm not reading Teen Titans fan fiction, but I like I can see that, and I can appreciate like fan art if it comes across my Instagram or something, and like even if it's not Rob Star, which I still absolutely would die for them. Getting older for me meant shifting away from my ship has to be the right ship. And so knowing that's how I felt being young, I kind of see that same mentality in like kids and like young people in fandom today.
So when did you start, like when do you remember having a ship that you knew wasn't going to become canon, or you were just shipping it because you liked it, not because you necessarily wanted it to be there?
Yeah, I don't quite remember. I kind of fell out of fandom kind of partway through high school, and then I got back into it with Supernatural. When like Supernatural, I shipped Destiel. I wanted that to happen. I know you're rolling your eyes because you hate Destiel, but
I don't have a lot of no TPs in life, but Destiel is a no TP of mine.
Yeah, it's a contentious point in our relationship.
It's also low-key a little bit how we got introduced.
Yeah, that was awkward. Basically, my friend knew we both watched Supernatural and enjoyed it a lot. She knew that I shipped Destiel. She thought that Marika shipped Destiel, and so we were in the same room, and she took each of our hands and brought them together and was like, "You both ship the same thing." And Marika was like, "No."
Which, side note, this is so weird to think about that this happened in college.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds like something that should have
No, but yeah, it was
when we were way younger. But
it was my second year of college.
And two, it was just such a weird situation. I've never been shy about being involved in fandom culture. Like, Tumblr, I think, is the best example, is that I was very involved in fandom culture on Tumblr. I wrote fan fiction that I posted to my Tumblr. Like, it was all very public, and I didn't not share my Tumblr with people I knew in real life. So I never hid the fact that I was a part of fandom, but it's not something I went around necessarily talking about and exclaiming about.
Yeah.
And so, like, just to be introduced to someone right off the bat with, like, you ship the same thing, and then it's like, it's not only did I not really ship Destiel, but like I actively really didn't like it. And it's like, man, I don't really want to get into this in person. Like, this is not how, so it's like, but I felt weird just being like, yeah, because that would be a lie. So it was just like, no, like, you tried, but no.
Yeah. And I think we just laughed it off. Like, I don't remember anything past that point.
Yeah, we laughed it off. Yeah, we had to have laughed it off. I don't remember what our conversation was at all afterwards. I remember I was like, no, like, I ship Sastiel, but like, close.
Yeah, and like, fandom is something that I very much did not advertise that I was at all part of for a very long time. I still do not. This being on this podcast is a miracle for me. Like, she was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's fine." But yeah, so I don't really remember like the first ship that I didn't feel like I cared if they were canon or not. Like, I feel like for me, there's always like some part of me that like is always like, like it'd be cool if this was canon. But like, I don't hold any like hope for it or anything like that. But I feel like my first rare pair that I was super excited about, again, back to Harry Potter, it was just such a big thing for our generation, was Dean and Seamus. I think that was like the first rare pair in a fandom that I was ever really into. And so I got into them, and I got into Parvati and Lavender after that. Oh, I got into Eddie and Barry from The Flash.
Also, when did you notice that your ships like kind of switched from male female like boy girl pairings to a more queer like focused? Because isn't that's so interesting to me. Sometimes I try to like self-examine, like, am I into this because it's gay? Am I into this because am I not into this just because it's straight or straight leaning?
Yeah,
because
there's such a like in fandom in general, there's such a like anti-hetero ship
right
kind of
now,
mentality.
which I feel like is a shift. I feel like this isn't just my interest changing. I feel like there definitely has been a shift where, you know, 15 years ago, it was more the norm to have fan content created around straight ships, and now it is more the norm to have content created around specifically gay male ships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you're going to hate me for this, but Destiel was my first.
I don't hate you for
it. You judge me for it, though. I know you do.
I don't judge it for being your first.
You judge me just for shipping it.
No, I don't judge people. I understand where Destiel like comes from. I just the reason I mentioned earlier, like, I don't really see a lot of anti-shipping rhetoric in Haikyuu. And I do sometimes, especially on TikTok is where I'd most likely see it, but it's nothing compared to being like an active like Sastiel shipper and an active person that didn't really ship Destiel. Like, I was never on the personal receiving end of any hate about it for the most part, just because I wasn't big enough to, but I was friends at the time with a couple really prolific Sastiel shippers and writers, and I saw the shit that they got for it. And so a lot of like my distaste was just like, this was something that I didn't ship, and on top of that, like, that was some of the most toxic fan interactions that I've seen and experienced essentially secondhand, was like how just targeted and going after people some of the Destiel shippers were. So I joke about it, like, oh, you're trash, you ship, but I understand why like people ship Destiel. And I also just like fucking think Dean is such an asshole. Like, I just don't really, as the series went on, I liked him less and less as a character, so I'm just like, he's a dick.
Yeah, but yeah, Destiel was my first gay ship. I read Wolfstar a couple times, which I was like, that's weird. Remus marries Tonks. But like, for me, I feel like it's more the area that I grew up in. And so I grew up in a really conservative town. And while I wasn't homophobic, it wasn't anything that I knew about.
Right.
Like, I had, like, there was a few gay people in my high school, and I was friends with them. But it wasn't something that was talked about. It wasn't something that was taught. And so it wasn't until I joined Tumblr in late high school and then heard about Supernatural. And so like just being on Tumblr and like experiencing like LGBTQ culture for the first time, like that's where I learned a lot of terms in the beginning.
Right.
Like, and so being exposed to that, and then watching
like representation. Sorry, I don't fully mean to interrupt you, but that is such a good point. Like, representation fully matters into just normalizing things in people's minds.
Yeah.
Because even when you're not bigoted necessarily against a certain group, there's still just a degree of separation that can't be overcome if you're not just exposed to it. And so I grew up in Portland, very liberal. I knew and was friends with multiple people who were, well, now we would say queer. We probably wouldn't have used that term growing up. But I kind of had the same experience with polyamory and polyamorous ships, where I was never against polyamory. I remember I love my mother. She's pretty progressive. And I remember there was this one, I'm trying to remember what show it was, like Tyra or some talk show, Oprah, something like that, where they were, I don't even remember. I was so young at this point. Like, I think I was middle school, maybe even late elementary school. And we barely ever watched this type of TV. Like, I don't even know why this was on in our house. My mom was very not into reality television. And I mean reality television even going so far as to, like, talk shows and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, they were having a debate about gay marriage. And I remember there was one guy who stood up and was talking about how he was anti-gay marriage, and he was saying that his religion, you were allowed to have multiple wives, but the US government said you couldn't do that, so we're following the law. And that's what, because this was before gay marriage was legalized. And so he was like, and that's what gay people have to do. They have to follow the law. Like, essentially was his argument. And I remember my mom being like, that's, like, stupid. As long as everyone's consenting, who cares, like, if you have multiple partners? And my mind, as, like, this child, was like, like, it's okay to have multiple partners if everyone says it's okay. And I kind of took that and I was like, that's cool. And that happened at a very young age, and that kind of formed my morals around it. And so I never thought it was wrong, but I didn't know anyone who was outwardly polyamorous. I didn't know anyone who either would be okay with that or was in a relationship like that openly again. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really see that. I mean, I still don't super see it in my real life, but it's definitely more normalized and talked about in, like, online spaces as well. When I started reading ships and stuff like that, I was always like, yeah, polyamorous ships just, like, aren't for me to consume because I don't really relate to that, or I'm just not interested in it. It's not that I had an issue with it, but I just didn't see, like, an attraction towards, and I mean, I don't mean attraction in, like,
a draw.
Right. I just didn't see the draw for myself. That has changed for me now, and I know it just has to be, like, exposure. Like, the idea has gone more normalized in my mind that it's like there's not this subconscious, this is weird and I don't like it, that I'm running up against. And so I think, like, both of our situations are, like, two different examples of essentially the same thing, where it's just illustrating how important, like, exposure is, like, and representation is, so that everyone is just more inherently comfortable with things.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so being exposed more to the LGBTQ community and, like, terminology and, like, ideas and culture through Tumblr. And then I watched Supernatural, and like, I heard about Destiel and I was like, let's see what this is all about. And then I was like, whoa, I actually really vibe this. And then I watched all of Supernatural, got really into Destiel, got really into fandom again with Supernatural, and then kind of fell into, like, the other, like, I didn't get into Doctor Who. I did watch Sherlock, did ship John Locke, and, like, all of that. I remember my first polyamorous ship being John, Mary, and Sherlock from Sherlock. I was like, I kind of dig this as a trio. I was like, what is happening to me? And now it's always a joke, like, kind of in, like, fandom, but, like, I always have the, like, there's, like, a joke that goes around that's always like, polyamory is the solution to all your ship wars, like, just throw them all together.
Yeah, why not?
But and, like, I still had straight ships at the time. Like, I was watching Once Upon a Time and I really liked Emma and Captain Hook. I still have straight ships, like, and, like, Teen Wolf, I really liked Lydia and Styles, which was not the most popular pairing. Everybody really liked Styles and Derek, which I just didn't see. I was like, I don't know what this is. Whatever. I liked Lydia and Styles, and people like, man, Teen Wolf was very toxic fandom. Like, I, for a while back when I was, like, actively watching shows once a week, I would watch, like, the newest episode, and then I'd go into the fandom tag on Tumblr and I would just see what people are saying. And wow, the ship wars were, like, probably, like, some of the worst I've seen. And
for Teen Wolf,
yeah, on Teen Wolf, it was bad, and a lot of people hated Lydia and Styles as a couple. I feel like part of it was the, like, anti-straight ship bias that was starting to emerge in fandoms, but also, like, because, like, she was, like, the pretty popular girl and she ignored him at first, and then they end up part of the same friend group and, like, Supernatural fighting monsters and stuff together, and so they're like, oh, like, Lydia treated him so bad, and, like, da da da, and, like, et cetera, and, like, I don't know, there was a lot of shit that people dumped on Stydia which when I say it out loud, that does not sound like a good ship name.
It sounds like STD.
Yeah, it sounds like chlamydia. But yeah, and so like I still had like Oliver and Felicity from Arrow, stuff like that. But I still had straight ships, but Destiel was the first one that opened my eyes to gay ships. And then that was when I heard of like Merlin and Arthur being shipped together. And I had already been watching Merlin with my dad, and I was like, people ship them together? That's so weird. And then I was home from college, and so because I was watching it with my dad, we like I waited to watch the last season until I was watching it with him. And then I was watching, and then I was like, oh my God, they are really gay. And so it's kind of that like shift in mindset of like opening your eyes to character dynamics that you hadn't previously thought of, or like things that you just don't see as queer coded because you've never seen anything queer coded in your life, or you haven't thought about it.
Yeah, you don't know that what you're seeing is queer coding or could be interpreted as.
Yeah. And so
because it's just not like an option if you won't think of, like if you aren't aware of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't even think, because I'm trying to think about what my first queer ship was. It's hard because I got really into Marvel as kind of after I left Harry Potter and before I got really into Supernatural, I was very, very into Marvel, but I never really consumed fan fiction for it or was an active participant. I talked about shipping in terms of, like I said, I really liked Science Bros, and I don't even really remember, to be quite honest. But Marvel is kind of an anomaly for me because I was so heavily in that fandom, but not heavily into shipping culture or into fan fiction, which I usually was. I was for every other fandom that I've been into. I feel like my open-mindedness towards queer relationships probably happened somewhere through that, but it was also at a time where I wasn't really shipping anything with big gusto. And so Sastiel is probably the first queer ship, honestly, that I can think of that I like really was like, yes, I ship this, but it wasn't like a revolutionary, like
it wasn't like, oh,
yeah,
gay
because
people.
I had already like kind of started that with Marvel, and I had read a couple gay Harry Potter fanfics when I was younger. Like I said, I usually just touted Hermione around to all the men, but I read a little bit of Harry Draco, not really any. And I read a little bit of some of the Marauders, various combinations of mostly Remus and Sirius. But at the time, I was really like a little bit grossed out by, this is like almost weird to think about. I was a little bit grossed out by like anal sex. But in my mind, I was like, I don't like that they're using descriptions of like lube. I don't know why. So I liked it better when they like didn't have lube, because in my head I was just like, I can't deal with the lube. And like me now, that is so horrifying.
You wanted them to have dry anal sex.
It's the worst. I wasn't even reading that much. Like I wasn't. I know. Well, I didn't know how sex worked. I'm talking about middle school me. I wasn't even reading a lot of smut back then. Like we had this discussion previously, but you know, I didn't seek out smut. It was just if I happened to be reading a fic and it was there, that's when I would read it when I was really young. Normally that's the only time that I was like really, so I would be like skimming it. Like, I'm like, the butt stuff. So for a while I like only would read fics where they were like doing oral, because I was like, okay, I can get behind the gays in oral. And then
oh my God.
And then I was like, okay, it's fine if they have anal, but like no lube.
Oh my God.
And then I don't even know at what point I was like, no, lube is really necessary.
Lube is super, like, use more lube than you think you have to, fam. Do not follow in childhood Marika's footsteps thinking that you need no lube. You need lube.
No, it wasn't that. I just didn't want to read about it.
That's so funny. I like that you're like reading about anal sex and you draw the line at lube. Like,
I don't know.
There's
it's
a penis
so
in an asshole.
Well, because
and
like
you're like,
It's also weird because I was really into sex education. And, you know, growing up, I always think to myself that I was pretty well educated in sex. And sometimes I make the mistake of thinking that I had a good sex education, like going through school. While I don't think it was a terrible, like, I think it was better than a lot of people get.
Better than mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think there was a lot that was done right with my sex education in school, but it was not, like, queer inclusive at all, and I can recognize that. And it just didn't get into a lot of aspects of things that I think it probably should have. But I just got so curious towards sex, but it was specifically like sex education. And I don't really know what fueled this, but there was this site called Stumble Upon. I don't think it even exists anymore, but it was basically an aggregate of a lot of sites on the internet, and there was different categories, and you would quote unquote stumble upon different sites. So you could choose a category like sports, and you would hit the button and it would load up a website related to sports. And there was a category for, I think it was sexual health or something along the lines of that. And I would just spend like my time on Stumble Upon just like reading about like all sorts of sexual health. And then there was a couple of YouTube channels that were talking about sex health and sex education that I was watching. And so eventually, I guess I probably just unknowingly educated myself out of this. And like I said, so that was happening when I was in like middle school, and my Marvel fandom probably happened mid to after high school throughout college until I started watching Supernatural. And that's when I was in fandom but not reading content. And so honestly, probably my education with that happened then separately. So that once I was back into reading fan fiction, I was no longer like grossed out by lube, because I was like, no, this is really important. And also I had sex by that point. So I had a little more of a realistic expectation.
You had some context.
Yeah, I had some context behind sex.
Oh, goodness. Well, character growth.
Yeah, character growth right there. It's interesting because I don't know if this is really applicable, but I was just thinking earlier when you were talking about being right with your ship, and I was talking about how I think maybe part of the reason I sought out, I think maybe it's a miracle that I never got into X-Reader stuff.
Yeah?
Because I honestly can look back now and realize that what I was doing with Hermione was essentially self-inserting myself into her position. And I remember being even younger, and like when Harry first had his crush on Cho Chang, being like, oh, if only it could be Cho Chang, and like Harry would have a crush on me. Like that's when I was really young too. My first foray into fan fiction was MuggleNet they had a section for fan fiction. And I remember asking my mom and being like, what is fan fiction? My mom, she was a huge science fiction fan growing up, and she got like science fiction magazines that would post original stories, novels, parts of novels and novellas in one shots, but also publish fan fiction sometimes.
Okay.
And so she knew what that was, and she was like, oh, it's this, right? She gave me the definition. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And I remember like clicking on the tab, and one of the first fics I saw was essentially a what if Harry had been sorted into Slytherin type. And I was like, and this is, I'm probably like in 4th grade or something like that. Like I'm really young. And I was just, again, mind blown. I was like, oh my God, what if Harry had been sorted? And then there was a section of MuggleNet that they let users submit predictions for the future books. And there was someone who had submitted a prediction that like Hermione and Draco were going to get together. And looking back on it, it was definitely like just some person living out their shipping dreams on this prediction thing. And at the time, I kind of had that same reaction where I was like, that's so stupid. Like, there's no way that Hermione is going to get with Draco. Like, what? And then my mind was like, oh my God, I wonder if people like wrote fan fiction about this. And I was seeking it out as this like totally like, how can people even think to ship this? But then I was like into it. And then I started reading a couple, and I was like, wait, no, but I see this. And so Hermione and Draco is who I shipped together for a long time, just in terms of what I would read, even though I knew, quote unquote knew, that they weren't going to get together in canon. But I was like, I'm into this. And then I joined it was called the Twin Exchange forum on fanfiction.net. And basically they were just a bunch of users who ran some like fan fiction contests and stuff like that. They would give a prompt out I think it was every month. They set out a prompt list and you could write for the prompt list and whatever. And so usually every prompt came with, there was like 3 different sections and 3 different options in each section, and you choose one from each. And so one of the things would be pairings, and so there would be 3 different pairings that you could choose from to pick. And so it was usually Hermione and one of a Weasley, and then whatever. And so that's what kind of got me into reading like Hermione and other people. And then, you know what, thinking back on it, I think all of the pairings for that might have been straight too. I can't even think of, maybe not, maybe I don't know. It'd be interesting to go back, because I'm sure those forums posts still exist. It'd be interesting to go back and see, because again, that it wasn't even something that was super on my radar at that point. I guess our introductions to fandoms were just really different as well.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about before. This is really interesting, just hearing like our intros to stuff, because like for the most part I didn't really multi-ship. Like I was like, once I got older, I was like fine with other pairings, and I could see like where people were into other pairings and stuff, but like, and I would read fan fiction for sometimes. Like I read some Marvel things. I read some like fan fiction for free after I watched it, which I watched free in like a week. And of course, since I have watched it, there's been more that's come out about it, so I have not watched all of free, but I remember like almost nothing about it, and I remember almost nothing, like absolutely nothing about the fan fictions that I read for it, but I know I did read some fan fiction. But like it's very rare for me to like deep dive into a fandom, which has really only happened with Haikyuu, Harry Potter, and Supernatural. Like I would dabble in some fandom stuff, and I would like reblog things on Tumblr and like see people's discourse posts and like seek out cool gift sets and like engage with fandom in that way for like all my other like things. But like in terms of like seeking out fan fiction as a way to like kind of fulfill what I'm feeling about the characters or something, it's not something that I did a lot outside of like these few fandoms. I was really big into Avatar: The Last Airbender fan fiction too, though. That was another Pokemon, Teen Titans, Avatar: The Last Airbender were like very early like fandom experiences for me. Although Teen Titans I didn't really get into too much fan fiction, but I read Avatar: The Last Airbender fan fiction in comment threads on nick.com, which is not a great way to read fan fiction. But that was one of my first exposures to it, and it was also one of my first exposures to multi-shipping, because there was like Katara and Aang, and then there was also Katara and Zuko, and I liked both. And I was very confused by this, because like it was like multi-shipping just wasn't something that I was like, because again, I wanted to be right, and I didn't know which one was going to be right. And so I would read both. I tended to read, I actually got really into Zutara though. Like that ended up being my favorite ship, quote unquote. But then it turned into this weird thing for me where when I watched the show, I liked Katara and Aang. Right. But when I wanted fan fiction, I wanted Katara and Zuko. And so it's kind of like what you were talking about, like you wouldn't seek out what like was canon or what was going to be canon, you would seek out other things. And so that was like weird for me. I was like, I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to handle that, but I did. I handled it. It was fine. And so that was kind of my first introduction to shipping something and not wanting to see it be canon. So I guess the question from earlier when you asked me what was the first ship that I didn't want to see canon, I guess it would be Zutara.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like now that I've thought about that and remembered that, which like I would have been happy if it was canon. Like I remember being a kid and watching like the catacomb scene on nick.com and like 1,000 times and being like, oh my gosh, look, they're bonding over their dead mothers.
How romantic.
Yeah. So I feel like Haikyuu is the first fandom where I'm really super open about multi-shipping. Like,
interesting.
Yeah.
I
Like,
don't think I realized that about you. I just kind of assumed that we were all multi-shipping all the time.
No, I was like, I was like, it was like I was fine with other pairings, but I had my pairings that I liked and I stuck with those. And so, like, for the most part, that's still kind of how I am. I'm like way more open to reading or like consuming content for other stuff, or like I'll show you like an Atsuhina like Instagram post where they're like being a cute couple, and I'm like, look how cute they are, even though I like far and above prefer Kagehina. I've read and like lots of rare pairs and stuff, and like I don't know, I'm just fine with all of it. Like I just like all of the characters and I like all their potential. And
do you think that that's because of like the show itself and the type of characters they write and the storyline that it goes for, or do you think that that is because of who you are now in life?
I'm thinking it has to do with the show, because we watched My Hero like pretty much right after we finished Haikyuu the first time, and I don't feel quite as much that way about My Hero. Like I'm still fine with like whatever people want to ship in My Hero. Like I have my favorites, and again, I'm definitely not as into fandom with My Hero as I am with Haikyuu. I haven't read a ton of fan fiction for it, and so I don't seek out a lot in that way, as I do with Haikyuu. Like I've read a lot of Haikyuu fan fiction, a lot, fam. I made it through like 30 pages of Kagehina fics one time. I think like I was going like chronological, like reverse.
Yeah.
And so I was just going through the Kagehina tag because I was very desperate. I was like, I need this. I need them. And so while I probably wouldn't ever go into like bringing Atsuhina again, like I probably wouldn't ever go into the Atsuhina tag and be like, I'm really feeling an Atsuhina fic. But if one gets like, if you read one and recommend it to me, or if like there's like someone's wrecking it on Twitter or Tumblr or something, or if I'm going through like a tag like bed sharing or something and an Atsuhina.
How often do you go through tags, like content tags like bed sharing, as opposed to just general ship tags?
Not terribly frequently.
See, maybe that has like something.
I usually go through ship tags.
I pretty equally probably split through both. But I probably do go through more ship tags than I do content tags, but I will very frequently filter just a fandom and a couple content tags and see what shows up for that.
Yeah, I haven't really done that prior to Haikyuu. Like there was the time I was going through the mutual pining tag, and then after that I went through the fake dating tag for a little bit. I went through the wedding tag one time. Not like in its entirety. Like I would go through like a couple pages and pick out what was interesting to me until I was done with the content tag once I got my fill. I don't tend to do that too much though, because I don't want it to feel all the same. Like which is why I liked the mutual pining tag, going through that a lot, because there's so many different premises. Like mutual pining is just like the feeling, whereas like other like bed sharing or fake dating, those are like more plot relevant,
and they're like guiding how the story is actually happening.
And so that kind of tag I don't think I would go through too frequently. Like that was more like I was just kind of like seeing what tropes or like what kind of different scenarios people did with their fake dating, or like the wedding tag that I was going through. I don't think I made it very far through that one. I was just in the mood for wedding fics.
I guess I don't really go through tags that are I guess usually when I'm going through individual tags, it's more like kink specific, and not necessarily like kink in the way of kinky, but kink in relating to sex. Like it's more like a sex specific type tag, and so that probably stops them from being too repetitive, because that totally makes sense. Like you wouldn't want to go through a bunch of bed sharing fics because it's all the same premise. There's only one bed.
There's one bed.
There's just one bed.
Why do they share it this time?
When you like go through the object insertion tag, there's a lot of different objects and different ways they could get inserted.
Incredible.
That's how, fun fact, that's how I got into Sabriel, because from Supernatural, Sam Winchester and Gabriel, because I was going through, I think it might have been the object insertion tag, maybe coupled with some other stuff. I was looking for a really specific fic type. Oh, do I want to admit this out loud? I was looking for like someone like having something up their ass and like wearing that or having that experience like in public.
Oh, okay.
And I don't remember what kind of parameters specifically I was looking for, but like I could only fucking find like say real. And I was previously like not really about it, mostly because it came as like a secondary ship to Destiel. That's where you saw it like 90% of the time. But I was just like so fucking thirsty for like this tag that I read it and I was like, I'm like okay with this. Then I just kind of started like consuming more of that ship, and then I got really into it, which posed kind of a problem because like I said, I really no TP'd Destiel. And so finding like Sam Winchester and Gabriel centric fics that did not, I read a lot of background Destiel like that, I just had to accept as a part of it, but even that like they weren't the main pairing, it was Sam Winchester and Gabriel as the main pairing, it was a struggle. It's a struggle when you ship a secondary ship to a main ship that's your no TP.
Yikes, yeah. But yeah, so Haikyuu, like My Hero and shipping, like I'm fine with a lot of ships.
Yeah.
Like I'm fine with, like I've seen people ship Deku and Ida, which I think is cute. My favorite Deku ship is actually Deku and Marika, so you know, rare parent, straight rare pair on that one. But they don't have to be straight.
They don't have to be straight. That's why at the very beginning of this, I tried to avoid saying straight because just because you're in a male-female relationship doesn't mean it's necessarily a straight relationship, but a lot of times it is depicted as that, or it is how people read them. Like if you're shipping Deku and Marika together, because they are the ship that canon is leaning towards, and they are a guy and a girl, I think is there's tendency to interpret that relationship as straight, because why would you deviate from the norm if you don't have to?
Yeah.
And I use norm in the context of like what society expects as being normal, not what is the baseline for normal. So, but I mean, yeah, you could totally have Deku and Marika in a relationship and they could be bi or pan or queer or whatever, asexual.
Any of the above.
Yeah.
But
check which boxes you want. So,
yeah, but yeah, like, or like you really like Baku Shinso. And Deku Shinso. That's
to be fair, I did have a Baku Shinso moment before I got really into Kiribaku. And then, see, this is so strange for me because this is like one of the first times that I have shipped a pairing so strongly that I don't really multi-ship them. And that happened with Bakugo and Kirishima. Is like once I got into that ship, I was like, it's only this for me. And I had previously gotten into Bakugo and Shinso, and there was a couple fics that I really liked, and I even had like an idea that I still conceptually really like and think is a really strong idea, but I just can't bring myself to care about it anymore because I just so only see Bakugo with Kirishima, and I'm so upset at myself for this because I'm just like, you're a multi-shipper at heart. Why are you limiting yourself? There are good fics and good ships. Why are you limiting yourself to this? But I just ship them so much. But yes, I did have a Bakugo and Shinso moment, but more recently I have been more into Shinso and Deku.
Yeah, but yeah, so like I like pairings, multiple pairings for characters, but I'm just, with Haikyuu, I just feel so much more open to so many ships. And like, there's a lot of characters and there's a lot of ships. And I don't know, it's all good to me. There are ships I don't enjoy or like really don't care for. Like, I've read a couple of fics where Ukai and Psycho have been a background couple, and I don't care for that, like, at all. But I also didn't shy away from reading those fics because they were in the background. Like, it's fine for me. And so I feel like part of it is that I've gotten older and I'm more fine with other ships and things like that. But I do think a big part of it just is the show, and everyone is so engaging and cool that there's so much potential for different dynamics with all of the characters. So
yeah, I definitely agree because I'm a pretty big multi-ship. Yeah, it's hard
You're
because
more of a multi-shipper than I am.
There's not a lot of media that has a dynamic cast as large as Haikyuu. Like Harry Potter, because I was gonna say I am a multi-shipper, and I've been a multi-shipper, like we've heard about throughout the course of this podcast since I was very young. But I was going to say not necessarily to the extent that I do it with Haikyuu, but part of that is just like when you look at, for example, Supernatural, I mean, the cast, it's a decently sized cast, but it's still so small in comparison to just how many characters you really end up caring for about in Haikyuu. So there is just like way more opportunity to multi-ship.
So you'll actively like read fics with like a certain pairing, and then a little while later read fics with like the one character from that pairing, but like a whole different pairing.
I really wish that AO3 had the option to search a single name, but in a pairing.
Oh yeah,
like because
like something / like asterisk, like any.
Yeah, because there was a while where this happened both with Goshiki and with Kendaichi, my two just like soft boy loves of my heart, where I really wanted fics that had them with a person, and I didn't really care who the other person was. But like there's not a way to filter, like you can search just character Goshiki, but a lot of times, especially with smaller characters like Kendaichi and Goshiki are, you're gonna just get them as like a side character in a bigger ship. So I wanted like them in a relationship with someone, but I didn't care who, and so I just like went and I just searched them with different ships, as many as I could find. But I think about that sometimes because there are some, probably like if someone wrote like a Goshiki Yachi fic. That's the first one.
That's random.
But you know what I mean? Like I might be open to reading that, but how the hell would I ever find that?
Yeah. Being a rare pair creator, like these people are strong. Just gotta, like, so much of fan creation is in the gratification of seeing other people enjoy your work. And that's not for everyone. Like some, like obviously people do it just because they like it, but there is like a part of like if you're creating this thing, like again, it's kind of part of the community. Like you want to see other people enjoy it, you want to like engage with people over this thing that you like, and then you find other people who like it too, and it's exciting. But when you're a rare pair creator, like you get like maybe a couple comments on your fic, and that's it. And you just kind of have to subside on the fact that you created something that you enjoy, and you kind of have to be happy with that. And so rare pair people who are deep into their rare pairs, there are people out here filling entire tags just themselves. And it's like, look at you go captain my captain of this ship. And so yeah, we've both written for pretty rare pairs before. I have one fic for a pairing that I think has less than 7 fics in it, and every time I get a kudos on that fic, which isn't very often because like I said, it's a super rare pair, I just hope that I have fulfilled that one person looking for it. Because you know, it sucks when you like really want to read about a pairing but there's barely any fic, and maybe those fics aren't up your alley, or they're not well written, or not what you're wanting. And so it's like every time I get a kudo on that fic, it feels like particularly fulfilling because I'm like, you probably searched for that. This didn't come up in this wasn't a recommendation.
Yeah, no.
This was something that cropped up for you, and you took a chance on it.
I don't know if you feel, because you've also written for some pretty rare pairs as well.
The rare pairs that I've written for, they're kind of like, they're like part of a series for like a week that happened. And so they're all rare pairs. And so I'll get people who will like read like all of the series or like parts of the series. Like they're not connected, they're just connected through the event. And so yeah, it's just interesting to see like, cool. And it's when they don't read all of them, like if I get an email and it's not all 7 of them, it's interesting to me to see which ones they left out.
That's the thing. I don't really ever look at kudos in terms of how many kudos a fic has. Like I couldn't tell you how many kudos any of my fics have. But it is fun to get the email just to see kind of the spread of where they're going, because I have a series that I don't think it would be giving away too much to say. It's a Kiribaku primary fic, and then a next fic which isn't them, and then another fic which is them again. And it's always interesting to see if people skip the middle fic. Which happens decently frequently. Yeah, it's just interesting to see like when that happens, when that doesn't. And also just having the series in general is kind of interesting at that, because to see if sometimes people jump in at the second one or give kudos the first one but don't move on to the second one, or if they did, they didn't give kudos, or they forgot, who knows. So yeah, kudos are just a fun way of kind of getting a snapshot of what people are interested in your portfolio.
And like creating for Rarepairs is also fun just because people are like so much more enthusiastic about it just because they're so rare. And like I've gotten some comments of people being like, oh my god, you wrote this is my favorite like thing for this. Like I had someone reblogged a Tumblr post where it was just me like posting the link to the fic and like the summary, and someone reblogged it. It was a polyamorous 3-character relationship, and so like polyamory ships are always like really pretty rare ships. But someone reblogged it and they were like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite fic for this ship. I know there's like 12 fics out there, but this is my favorite. And I was just like, it made me so happy. And like I don't know, like those fics are not gonna do anywhere near as well as the fics that I've written for really popular ships. But I almost feel more pride in them because it was like, obviously, like, I don't create something because I feel like I have to. Like, I create stuff that I like and that I want to create. And so I'm proud of all of my fics, but there is, like, just kind of a little, like, like, rare pair pride. Like, we're the small, tight-knit community here. And so opening myself up to multi-shipping and polyamorous shipping has, like, just made my life so much easier. Because, like, I don't feel like I have to be right anymore. I don't have to be mad at people for misinterpreting the characters or whatever. Like, we're all just here obsessing over fictional characters anyway. Like, why make it harder or like more complicated?
Yeah, it's
like,
not that deep.
It's not that deep, fam. Like, let's just relax. And but yeah, so kind of circling back to the beginning when we were talking about kind of like seeing hate on ships that aren't like the main, like, that it just makes me really sad to see. And it's something that I didn't personally experience prior to, and it kind of has to do with like the fact that fandom is way more visible on social media now, but it wasn't something that I had ever really previously experienced before really Haikyuu and stuff, like in terms of like Rarepairs specifically. Like obviously like I talked about Ship Wars and Teen Wolf previously, like there was like attacks and negativity and like things like that, but like shitting on like the Rarepair for being what the Rarepair is, like just in terms of like why would you ship these two characters, like like Ship Wars in terms of like why would you ship them, this is why you shouldn't, this is why the relationship is bad, but just like hating on a ship just because like why those two characters, like not even just like giving reasons as to why you don't like the relationship because of like how you think it would be. But I'm just repeating myself now, but because like I had written for some Rarepairs in Harry Potter and got nothing but love for those. But I think it also kind of has to do with like the competition there, because like the Rarepairs that I wrote for weren't really shipped with anyone else. And so it was like Dean Seamus and Parvati and Lavender, and
you
so
weren't threatening any of the main pairs by writing them.
And so while it was rare and it didn't get as much attention as if I had written like a Harry Draco fic. Then
to be fair though, have you gotten negative attention on your Rarepairs, like on your fics?
No, not on the fics.
Yeah.
And it kind of like I see negative stuff commented, and not just on like my stuff, but like, and this is where my comment about like fandom being more present on social media comes into play. But Instagram comments sometimes, and Twitter and TikTok is where I see that, which has like larger bases of users. Instagram not so much. Like Instagram I don't see it super frequently, like really not at all.
Yeah, and those are also platforms where you're more likely to encounter ships that you don't ship by accident.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense. Not excusing it, but
yeah, because like you're just scrolling through TikTok and then boom, something that you might not like, because that's how the TikTok algorithm works. Or like, and like Twitter, you can mute stuff, but it's not the most foolproof system. Like there's a lot, like people won't, like they can post an image of the ship.
Is that?
Hopefully that's not being picked up by the mics.
That's such a weird fucking sound.
It sounds like a spring.
I know, like it sounds like kind of, but deeper through the wall.
Well, it's stopped now.
Okay, cool. Well, sorry about that if you could hear it. If you couldn't,
were we?
I don't. You were talking about stuff.
So on Twitter, someone can just post a picture of the ship without a caption, and like that obviously won't be caught by people muting something. Honestly, like people rag on Tumblr, but Tumblr had a pretty good filtering, like has a pretty good filtering system. Like there's a lot to be said about
Tumblr itself didn't.
Well, now they have like filtering.
Oh, I don't know, I guess.
But like the tagging system on Tumblr was honestly good. There's a lot to be said about like curating your own online experience, which has like been a push in fandom lately. Is like if you don't like it, scroll, mute, block, unfollow, like whatever you need to do to like curate your online experience, rather than like bullying people for what they post or like sending hate for what they're posting. Like I've been seeing a lot of people like trying to push that rather than like in order to just like, you know, like chill the fuck out, like have everybody chill out online. And so I think you're right, like those platforms, it's easier to get surprised by things. There's rare pairs that I really enjoy in Haikyuu that I will see really vitriolic hate for, which is like just so like baffling to me. I don't
feel like I see that as much.
I see it.
Like I follow specifically someone that I'm thinking of is I follow Ken Hina artist on TikTok that if I had any idea what their username is, I would shout it out right now, but I literally do not know usernames. And so I see a lot of comments that are, or a decent amount of comments that are like, ew, no. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier in the podcast when I say comments that are obviously rude, but then you're like, if you don't like it, go past. And the user responds, I'm sorry, I wasn't meaning to be rude. That's more the kind of comments I see, but I don't see as much like what I would classify as vitriol.
Yeah, and it's like, it's definitely not the norm. Like most of the time it's the you know type, like just mean, rude comments, but every now and then like you'll get people who are like downright disgusted by a rare pair that I enjoy. I'm friends with an artist who posts a lot of rare pair art, and she'll like post, like she'll message me and be like, oh, look at this shitty comment, like or like people will quote retweet her like art on Twitter and like say bad things about it. And like that's also just baffling to me because like people can see what you're saying. Like I'll post something on TikTok that's art of a rare pair and people will at their friends in the comments and then have a whole conversation about how weird the ship is, but they think it's okay to like say because they're like, oh, the art is good, but like this is so gross, like why would they ever, and da 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 da. And it's like I can see this, and it's like this weird disconnect where as soon as you post something online, like obviously like we're all just icons and usernames, and so it feels less like a person, but like there is a person there and they can see it, they get notifications for it, like it's you're so doing just it like why it's like you walked, it's like you're like, I'm having an open house and I'm like, look at my pillow, and then you just start like fucking attacking my like my decorative throw pillows or something. Like if you're in an open house, you probably wouldn't say that because the person's right there next to you. You'd like go home and be like, wow, that person had a really ugly interior design. Like you wouldn't say that right in front of them, you know? Like I don't know, I'm trying to like make a metaphor.
I don't think the metaphor was necessary. I feel like we all understand.
Whatever. I like metaphors. I did a lot of English literature classes for my degree. But yeah, it's just like that's really what gets me. I'm like, if you want to talk shit about it, like just direct message it to your friend and talk shit in your DMs about it. Like don't do it in my comment section. Like it's just
send
really
them the TikTok and then talk about it in the DMs
instead
of tagging them in it.
It's not that hard.
Also, if you're commenting on, like, TikTok's algorithm is actually really good at delivering what you interact with. Yeah. And so if you're fucking interacting with ships you don't like, you're gonna see more of them.
Yeah. Just tap the not interested button, fam. Yeah. Get over it.
And it's I don't know, just more needs to happen in terms of internet social education, I think. Really educate people at a younger age on what is appropriate online and what isn't, in the same ways that we try to teach them what is appropriate in person and not.
You do need to like take care of yourself.
And I feel absolutely. And I feel like being taught to safely navigate those spaces is important.
Yeah. Well, gotten way off topic.
Yeah, we have, but I think it's all interesting discussion. So I guess that about wraps up this part 1 of the episode. Part 2, we'll get into specific Haikyuu rare pairs that we vibe with, our thoughts on them, and get a little more character specific in our explorations of these topics. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at AcidWashPod. I almost said Tumblr. TikTok. TikTok at AcidWashPod. They have 0 posts right now, but hopefully by the time you're listening to this, I've posted some stuff. I don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Life continues to be difficult. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and do the YouTube type things to hit the notification
Smash
bell.
that bell.
Yeah. And I don't know, rate us 5 stars on Apple iTunes. We love Spotify. They're our ride and die. We finally got posted on Google Podcasts, so we are anywhere that you listen to podcasts. That's it. I don't know. We don't have an outro yet. Bye.
Bye.